Hello everybody and welcome to this latest webinar entitled Changing Dyslexia for a New Decade, when I really want to make some changes to what's going on in this decade for dyslexics. And tonight is a bit different. I put together a definition of what I thought was the way that we could work with schools. I mean, over the years, over the last 20 years, I've done Plan A, B, C and D, as it were, and we've done quite a lot in different schools, in different environments, but one of the things we've always found is that it falls apart in a school unless you've got a head teacher who's really engaged, and you get so much staff churn that actually after a few years they're not doing it anymore anyway. And so what I decided just before Christmas was it would be really great if every school had a neurodivergent school coach, and they could champion teaching and learning for neurodivergent students. And so a few of us have already been doing this, and so what I wanted to do tonight was to share it. And my overarching mission, I suppose, is how can we best serve our neurodivergent students, their families and the schools? And how do we stop them drifting into mental health issues? So this is me, and I've got a few practitioners on the line this evening, and they will be dropping in and out, as it were. And so I thought I'd first of all give you a summary of where I think we're heading, but this is a draft, I should point out, and then bring in the practitioners who are doing parts of this and ask them for their experience. Okay, so this is me, and my common theme, of course, is mental imagery and visualization. And so what I'm going to do is just introduce you briefly to some of the people that may be on the call tonight. These are all practitioners, these are all people I've trained, and they may be using empowering learning, they may be using some other skills, and they tend to be doing things in different ways. So I'm just putting them together this evening to share their experiences and share them with the audience. Julia is in Hampshire, Javier is in West London, and Jennifer is up in Derbyshire, and Jeanette is in Wiltshire. And of course we've got Sarah in Ireland, who isn't joining us this evening because she's totally overloaded with relevant activities. And there's myself in Hertfordshire, and there's more practitioners who are doing this, but these were just some of the ones I picked out. And of course we're still recruiting more to do this, and it's a great job, I should point out. The current paradigm is more and more growth in learning differences, as far as I can make out. The existing solution is assessment and teaching neurodivergent students as if they were neurotypical students. And so it's not sustainable if we carry on teaching all these kids as if they're neurotypical. And so my proposal is to teach students new skills that match their learning preferences, thus reducing the cost of special needs and long-term support. And we've tried teaching teachers, but as I mentioned earlier, this needs a whole school approach. And so what we're looking at now is a neurodivergent school coach who will work alongside the teachers, teaching the parents, and teaching the kids, and will somehow fill the gap that is missing in so many schools. So why am I doing this? Is to teach students new skills. That's the bottom line. That's the most important thing, is that students leave school with new skills that match their learning preferences. I want to reduce the cost of SEN because a lot of these kids are taking up a huge amount of time and money, and they are not learning in the way that they're not being taught in the way that they learn best. And I want to reduce the cost of long-term support Because if they're leaving primary school with poor literacy and numeracy, then there's going to be more and more support needed in secondary school and afterwards. And now teachers are experts in teaching, and I totally believe that. But neurodivergent school coaches would be experts in how neurodivergent children learn and how they can best access lessons. And what's happening is that our understanding of neurodiversity is gathering apace, and it's impossible for teachers to keep up with this. It's impossible for our training to keep up with this because they're dealing with the pressures on them every day of the week. And it's not a SENCO role that I'm looking at here, which is largely focused on implementing the government processes and procedures and dealing with a mountain of reactive tasks. So my suggestion about how we do it is we offer schools a part-time neurodivergent school coach. We teach teachers, children and parents that in the same skills, these same skills in the sort of on the job for a particular student. So what we're doing in a particular school will be different in different schools because of the need being different. And what you need is to be flexible and addressing the highest need. And I'm also, when we get to the, we get some results out of this, what I'm looking for is exploring how to fund it through either the pupil premium or some mental health initiatives or other local community sources. And the neurodivergent school coach is going to end up running specific projects for that school for the highest need. School budgets are so stressed at the moment to breaking point. We are going to have to look for creative ways to fund this role that in the long term will save so much money, anxiety and poor behaviour. So here's a list of some of the things that you can read off the screen that I thought might be useful for addressing the highest need. And if I just run through them, identifying student strengths, which is not often done. I met a child only this week in school who the first word I said to him was, "What are you good at?" And he went, "Drawing." And I went, "Great, this kid's good at drawing." And I said, "Draw me a cat." So he starts painstakingly drawing me a cat. And this is a child that they didn't think I was going to actually have much effect on. But I got him on what he was really good at, and he was loving showing me what he was really good at. And so then I very quickly moved him on to reading. He wasn't too bad at, but he had difficulty with words he didn't understand. But spelling he was really pretty poor at. And he was immediately spelling words that he had never spelt before. And so what more do you want? And so apparently in the next day in school, he's so excited, he wants more and more words to spell. Whereas before it was like spelling was a complete no-go area and he was going to draw pictures of birds and cats all the time. I think we need to ensure that every young child are taught skills to improve concentration, their left brain coordination, all of those sort of things, because this is where we drift into high anxiety and stress, and that's the last thing we want, because that's going to limit their ability to learn. Some of the schools I'm finding now are running mental health days in school. We could run a mental imagery day in school where we help students incorporate mental imagery into everything they're doing. We can assist teachers and parents to take a curious view of what's going on with behavior. We can help them with what the right questions are to ask students. We can teach brain-based skills and help them develop a growth mindset. One of the brain-based things I've been doing lately is to get children to look at labyrinths. Now labyrinths are different to mazes. There is only one way to the center of a labyrinth and there is only one way back. But it's great for left-right brain integration. And the last one, which is, if you've spoken to me before, you'll know I love, which is Howard Glasser's version of calling out a student when they get things right. And his comment is, the student who is appreciated will always do more than expected. So who are these neurodivergent school coaches? And so I'm going to ask one to come in now, and we'll see how they map up against what's written on the screen there. So let's see who I've got on here. So Julia, would you like to start with just giving a little bit of information about what you're doing in school, and I might ask you a few questions, and how you've got into school and how it's going so far. Julia, there you go.
Yeah,
Back again.
there we go. Yeah, I started a new school in September, and gradually starting with the various children I've got, which are the children that are at the they don't know what to do with stage because they've tried everything else. So I've got them, and I'm seeing slow progress because I'm not obviously having them as often as I'd like, but they have got a good mental imagery, and their pictures are still, their images are still, and we're beginning to see children. I'm beginning to see one of the children specifically able to read small words, which for him is quite a landmark at the age of 12.
Wow, so your children are, they're not primary, they're secondary?
No, they're primary up to 13.
Oh, okay, okay.
So yeah, and I gave the headmaster your book for Christmas.
Very nice, thank you. How did you manage to get into your school?
Volunteering to read.
And was that the school that your lad was at?
No. Well, I relocated, so I had to start again, and the primary school that my son was at is still a work in progress.
Okay. So you just tell me the story. How did you manage to just walk into this school and become one of them?
By volunteering to do reading, and they didn't have a job for me at the time, and just being there and being around and listening to the conversations and saying, well, I can help with that, I can help with that, you know where I am if you want me. And I got given 3 pupils last term, and one's left, and then that one's been replaced. So, and
Okay.
they're always wary, I think, of people that come in and with new ideas, because we've all heard them all before. But it's working, and I'm doing it with my private pupils as well. So.
Great, thank you ever so much. Right, so let's move back to Jennifer.
Hi there.
Hello, this is Jennifer, and would you like to tell us a bit about your background, Jennifer?
Yeah, okay, so I'm working with a school that I got into because it's where my son is at the moment, and they'd heard that I've been doing this wonderful work with Olive and asked me if I'd go in. I was first asked by one of the teaching assistants if I'd go in and have a chat to the other teaching assistants. So I went in then and started with that, and they were all greatly enthused, and the whole school has ended up getting on board. So I then went and spoke to all of the main teaching staff, and then the joining preschool lot as well. And they're very, very much on board, and I'm taking this up. So what mainly is happening is I'm helping the teachers do some of the bit that Olive was saying in terms of understand about helping the children control their mental imagery about the good breathing, about very much about the left brain, right brain coordination, and getting that in with various special exercises, even at the preschool stage, making sure they're moving correctly and helping those work. And at the preschool stage, starting to talk about the images in their head and going through all that lot. And they're very on board with that and going really well with that. And then helping them spot those in the classroom that maybe they can't help, that I need to do extra work with to help them calm their minds, or those that are sitting at a funny angle trying to write, and there's obviously a sort of midline crossing problem. So I'm seeing some children on a one-on-one basis, but I'm trying to get more and more knowledge actually within the school themselves so they can move it forward.
Wow, great. And how long are you spending in school?
So far, I've probably done 4 sessions with the various staff, hour-long sessions, and then I've just been, one-on-ones. I go in twice a week really and see about 4 different children, just for sort of half-hour sessions.
Great. And how do you feed back to their teachers about what you're doing with them?
I have little reports that I send, and also if I've got little things, occasionally I might give the child jumps up a session, I might have a little certificate or something he takes very proudly to show his teacher. And I'm getting feedback as well. The teaching assistant came in and showed me they did a sort of spelling assessment on this child and showed me how much they jumped up from when they last tested them. So they're very much, we're talking both ways really. It's quite lovely.
Absolutely great, thank you. What do you think about the idea of a mental imagery day or a mental imagery week?
I love it.
I love it.
I've written it down and put a big star next to it.
I think it's a tremendous idea to do, so it might be worth having a go at that one.
Yeah,
right.
I think it might be.
Thanks ever so much, Jennifer. And again, Jennifer, by the way, for the call, only did her practitioner training in the last year, and so she's picked it up really, really quickly, and I'm just delighted she's gone into her local school. So
I'm here.
Oh, well done, Lucy.
Oh.
Right, tell us what you're doing, Lucy.
Hi everyone. Well, I'm a dyslexia support teacher, so I do 2 days in my secondary school and 2 days in 4 primary schools, and so I've introduced all my students pretty much to mental imagery over the last 18 months, and I find I'm sure you all find the same, that different parts of the whole suit different students, and some students the whole bundle is what they need as well. So I found the grounding is really wonderful for everybody, in terms of for one student with reading anxiety, suddenly he reads more smoothly, so the reading isn't such a problem as long as he's grounded first. For others, it's a way of stabilizing the mental images so that they can focus, concentrate and remember. I've got one boy in year 5 now, and when I took him at the end of year 3, he couldn't read CVC. He couldn't, in the first term of year 4, he couldn't read CVC words. He couldn't blend them. And now he's reading all kinds of graded reader series, and that really is from using the mental whole word recognition. That's the only way he's picked up reading. And so after being in this particular primary school, doing the mental imagery with them until last week, so 18 months, finally this 3 staff asked me if I'd show them some of the grounding and the mental imagery, which I did, and so now they want me to show the whole staff, which is brilliant, because otherwise I feel like it's just me, and it's it's not a very extensive approach, because the students know it well enough to do it independently and in my sessions. But if it's not reinforced in the classroom, it's missing a trick. So after half term, I can go in and I can present to the whole school. And also what I notice, working in primary and secondary, is as you've been saying, if this is taught earlier, it's going to help so much more. So they're looking, I mean, the ALNCO, when she did the grounding herself with me, you know, she said, God, we need this for the reception children where there's not much language, or they don't play at home, it's all screens. So straight away she could see that the learning needs of students now has changed, and that we're still imposing a curriculum which doesn't really work, but we don't know what else to do. So yeah, that was really heartening.
Great. Can you just tell everybody where you are? And what
I'm
the
in North
implications
Wales.
are of that?
Yeah, well,
Yes.
so I work in Welsh and in English, and you know,
So
what I've learned is that it works in both languages, basically.
Lucy is very special because she's a bilingual teacher of this, and she's the nearest bilingual teacher we have. We have others who are French and English, but they're a little bit further away. Actually, one of the French and English ones moved back here. Anyway, so that was really interesting, wasn't it? In the early days of teaching it in Welsh. Do you remember, Lucy?
Yeah, because Welsh is a very phonetic language. So in terms of spelling, what you hear and say is what you write. You know, it's far simpler than English. And yeah, I've still got two students who, you know, who don't really read in Welsh. One, I got to him too late, really. He's now in year 9. No, he's now in year 8, and he's quite disenchanted because he landed in secondary school without being able to read. So, you know, I can see the importance of bringing this in far earlier, and also that he's definitely a young person who needed mental imagery as the whole approach, because phonics, poor short-term memory, all of those things just got in the way of his reading.
And it's so interesting because once they get mental imagery, they can be so much faster. That was one of the things Lucy phoned me up about in the early days when she did her training, and she said to me, Olive, what do I do in Welsh? Because this is a phonetic language and I'm seeing different things to what we're seeing in English. We've got children who can read and we've got children who can spell, but reading's really slow. And so we sort of inverted empowering learning, if you like, and went, okay, if they're reading slowly, then they're not moving on to word recognition. So we need to teach them how to visualize words so they can move on to word recognition and be more fluent.
Yeah.
Does that sound right, Lucy?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And so, you know, when you were talking about flexibility, that really is a key part, because, you know, all the students need slightly different, they have slightly different needs, of course. And so the whole, the whole mental imagery system can be applied in so many different ways.
Exactly. That's why it's as flexible as it is, and I encourage people to use it in the way that works for them. Okay, thanks ever so much, Lucy, and thanks for your time, because I know she's deep into writing reports at the moment. So thank you very much.
Thanks, Olive.
Let me give you a little report from Sarah. I was talking to her last week, and she's working with a school she got very integrated into the school in the early days of empowering learning, and the head teacher, who goes by the name of Shay, has done some remarkable work, I think, to integrate empowering learning into his school. And what he's achieved in the last few years is he's now got ASD students fully integrated into the school. And this, I believe, is the only school in Ireland that's managing to do this. So I think that's a great achievement in itself. And he really got into grounding and making sure there was a good learning environment for the students. And in the early days, I remember him telling me, and this is a few years ago now, so I hope I've got it right, is that they didn't have a learning scheme for Gaelic, and they started using word recognition for Gaelic. And since then, he's been teaching other people in Ireland, this is how you do Gaelic, because like English, it's not a purely phonetic language. And so and Sarah spends quite a bit of time in this school. She's been working with, she's been into documenting some of the training they've been doing in school. Oh, I should say every teacher in the school has been trained in empowering learning, every teacher and learning assistant. And she's now documenting how best to integrate this into a whole school approach. And so that's a little summary from her. I think I might have Javier back now, so.
Hello, can you hear me, Ollie?
Hello, we've got you. Just give us a little summary of where you are and how you work with schools.
Yes, so I've been working with the schools for 6-7 years. I am a life coach, and the way that I started is funny because you asked this question before, I think, to Jennifer, how did she start in a school?
How did you get in?
Yeah, what I did is basically because I was setting up my business and I had no income, I basically contacted hundreds of schools saying, hey, this is what I do. Give me a chance. I will not charge you anything for 3 months. And then if you like it, you continue. And if not, well, so be it. And I got a number of schools. I got around 6-7 schools, and then some of them continue, some of them drop by. And the 2 schools that I'm working with, I've been working with for 6 years.
Wow.
The important thing for me, or the strike of luck, because I didn't know at the time, is that I pitched myself as a life coach. Obviously, I hadn't trained with you, Ollie, at the time.
Yeah.
So what I pitched as a life coach, that gave me the entrance more into the behavioral side of it. What I do a lot, I don't do so much dyslexia or dyspraxia as per se. I do a lot of coaching, but I do loads and loads and loads of grounding. Yep. And I share that with the teachers, I share that with the parents, especially the parents, because the teachers, to be honest, they're so busy. And it's just what you say, Ollie, this has to be a whole school approach. And they have to kind of all buy into it, and the teachers have to allow the kids to use the techniques as well. But the grounding works fantastically well. You notice change on the kids right away. I do teach them visual imagery. I have to be very, very mindful because people get very protective. So the Senko teachers get very protective about what I'm getting into. So I don't say that I'm teaching them visual imagery or dyslexia or whatever. I'm working with that. I'm just teaching it to the kids, and then I kind of let them reach their own conclusions, and most of them do it. And it's just fantastic how they enjoy it, how it's just such a game, and they just love it. What I find really, really important is the triangle of a school, parents, and me, and making sure that everybody is aligned, everybody knows what I'm doing, what I'm talking with, how I'm helping the kids, how they can help the kids. So I constantly send notes after every session. I send notes to the parents. Pretty much I see 60 to 70% of the teachers every week. I catch up with them. How is the little one doing? Do you have any questions? Do you have any concerns? Can I help you anyway? Or this is what we cover. This is where I think he is. This is how you can help him. And I find that that has got me a lot of credibility. And basically because I'm helping them. Somehow it's a problem off the shoulders because they pass it on to Mr. Orty. Yeah. And the more credibility I have, the more trust I have from them, the more clients or kids that I have. One thing that I think it's important to say is I'm working on private schools. Yeah. So the funding is not a problem because the parents pay for that. And that is another kind of, is 2 different avenues. When I go like a music teacher, a peripatetic teacher. The parents have the option to take on my services or not. And the parents pay additional.
Yep. Very interesting. I think
But
you're one of the few that are actually running that model, and I think it's a really important model, and it's important to say that actually things like behavior and confidence and grounding are equally as important as learning to play a musical instrument, because in
absolutely.
schools, whether or not they're private schools, parents have been used to peripatetic music lessons for donkey's years.
Mm.
And so all we're doing is saying there's actually more stuff that's actually just as important to do.
Yeah, and the parents, I got loads of feedback. The parents don't know that I'm doing empowered learning because I have to be careful, yeah? But they know that I'm doing the remote control technique, or I'm doing the cars technique, or the tree technique. And the parents, many parents do that and work with the kids on that.
So how do you do the feedback to school and to the teachers and to the parents? You send them emails?
Write notes. Correct. I write the notes, and then I send them. I send each parent the notes. The notes are around almost a page. Yeah. Call it probably not 500 words, but probably around between 400 and 500 words. Sometimes more, sometimes less.
Yeah.
And I ask permission from the parents to inform the teachers, and 99% of the parents allow me to do it. And I got parents who call me and say, listen, I want to understand about tree or about cars. What does it mean? Because I do describe it, but not in depth. I said, okay, just sit down. Do you have 5-10 minutes? Sit down. I'm going to do it to you over the phone. And the parents love it. And obviously what I said is, now I want you to do it with your kid. I want you to do it as a relaxation technique, as a going to bed technique, pre-homework technique. So that I find that is very, very useful, that the parents feel supported by us as well.
That's absolutely great. Thank you so much, Javier. And thank you for your creative idea of how to do this. It's clearly working, and I'm sure other people will be able to model it. So thank you very much, and thanks for spending the time talking to us. So now I would like to introduce you to Jeanette Cowie, who is another one of our Empowering Learning practitioners, and she's got a little bit different story about how she's been helping a local school to her. So I'm going to ask her just to introduce herself, if she would, and then we'll have a conversation about how she's been doing this.
Okay, so I'm Jeanette Cowie. I'm a former primary school teacher and had many roles in my work, including as a sport for learning teacher for 20 years.
So here we have an expert.
A bit of an out-of-date expert, since I'm now retired.
Okay, so tell us how you came to contact was it your local school?
It's not actually my local school. It's the infant school that my granddaughter attends.
Oh, okay.
And I actually volunteered in the school last year, then worked as her class's TA in the summer term. And I also worked with some of the reception children on retained reflexes.
Oh, very interesting.
Yeah. And then so I did this your course over the summer, thinking that it might help my grandson who has ASD. And my daughter's actually chair of governors at the school, so I suggested to her that I might go and practice in the school. So that's what I've been doing.
So how did the school take to you volunteering to practice with them?
They were actually very positive about it. I went in and spoke to the Senko and gave her Your Elephants in the Classroom book, and said I would like to try it out. And basically she said, fine, go ahead, because at the moment they have no full-time TAs in the classes at the moment, and they will accept help from anybody.
Well, great. So you had an open door by the sound of it.
I had an open door, yes.
So which class, have you been working with individual children or classes, or what have you been doing?
I've been working with a group of year ones, and then I've now added a group of year twos onto that. The year ones, there are 6 children that I've been working with. Children who are easily distracted, who don't get a lot of help at home perhaps, and have an abundance of avoidance tactics when it comes to doing work.
Right.
And they've all come from diverse backgrounds. One child has had a disrupted education because of difficult home circumstances. And they're actually mainly young children. Most of their birthdays are in the second half of the school registration year.
Okay, that's so often true.
Yep, one has had speech and language input, and there are two others who have quite immature speech patterns. For example, still calling a banana a nana.
Right, okay.
3 of them have attendance issues, and one is a second language user.
Wow, you've got a really interesting group there, haven't you?
They are a really mixed bunch, and that's just the year one, the year one group.
And do you work with them as a group, or are you working with them individually?
Because they are so easily distracted, I take them individually.
Okay.
And I think apart from anything else, they like that 5 or 10 minutes just to have me to themselves.
Yeah.
And get all of my attention. And to begin with, we all had quite negative outlook on literacy, and they were looking down, they were being easily distracted. But they've become more positive, and they're looking up most of the time, and they're much more focused when they're with me. And one of the girls, who is probably the most academic of the group, she's very quiet and shy, and she was really, had a really negative self-impression. She just kept her head down all the time, and now she looks up most of the time, and it's such a nice feeling to see that happen.
Yeah, I bet.
She did tell me last week that she was shy, and that was why she had her head down.
Okay, so how's year 2 doing?
Year 2 are also a very mixed group. They have one who is diagnosed with ADHD. They have 2 second language users. One has only been at the school since the start of year 1, and her written skills are not up there with her oral skills yet. One is being tested for dyslexia soon.
Mm-hmm.
One of those has poor attendance, and there's also a child who is a native speaker, but I think he lived abroad and so hadn't been to formal school before.
Oh, okay.
And he came at the beginning of year 1. They were also very negative about spelling in particular, all negative responses. The spelling ages are mainly below their chronological age, and some of the errors that they make are very phonetic, and they confuse the letter name and the digraph. And I've only been working with them for about 3 weeks, but I can see a difference in them as well. With both groups, we tried the other day to picture the whiteboard in our head and take the picture away.
Mm-hmm.
And it worked with all of them.
Very good.
It was really good. And the year 1 group are saying, well, I'm still not very sure of banana in particular, which I think is quite an easy word to spell. They're having real problems with it because they don't say banana. They call it anana, or we say banana, and miss out that first day.
Yeah.
And so when I was working with them this week, they all gave me words that they'd like to spell when we go back after half term, and those words range from sun to binoculars. And it was actually one of the year 1s who wants to learn to spell binoculars.
Great.
So I'm looking forward to doing that with her.
And so you sound as if you're really enjoying this.
I am enjoying it, yes. I had dabbled a little bit years ago when I was a sport for learning teacher, but it never really took off in the authority that I was working in.
Mm-hmm.
And what I would like to do now is get time to sit down and speak to the SENCO again, because she's been really busy over the last few weeks. Because the year 2 teacher, she's a newly qualified teacher, and she's quite interested in doing the breathing and grounding in particular with her, the whole class. The year 2 cohort, there are 2 year 2 classes, and there are quite a number of needy children in there. Both classes have got children with ASD and other behaviour management issues, and they don't have support at the moment, and they've got no money to bring the support in.
Yep, and one of the things I've done in my school was to teach, well, 10 staff members, and I think they were mainly TAs, but some teachers as well, of the children in year 3, because they've got a lot of ADHD. And the SENCO was telling me there's no ADHD training available in school. I find that a bit bewildering, but anyway. And I went in and did a twilight session with them, and literally all I did was teach them breathing, grounding, and explaining to them mental imagery and how to keep their mental images still. And that's all I did. And they've had some great results adapting what I said to particular children. For example, they had one child who wouldn't write anything, and I said something about writing without looking at the paper or writing on the wall, and she, this TA got him to go up and start writing on the flip chart pad, and he could write just like that. And she said he was grinning, he wouldn't stop grinning because he could now do something, and it was all to do with the fact it stopped him looking down and being nervous. That's absolutely brilliant. Thank you. I think the only other ones, thank you to all of the practitioners that have been on the call, and the report from Sarah, who's doing great stuff in Ireland. And I think I'm just going to mention what I'm doing in my local primary school, which is not an independent school. It's a run-of-the-mill primary school. It's where my children went to school 32 years ago. And so I have volunteered to help them on the basis of 1 day a week and working with children and teachers and parents, whatever has the biggest need at the time. And I think the flexibility that we were talking about earlier is really important, because I think in every school it's going to be different. I would say I'm seeing, so far I've seen a few children from year 6. I've run a workshop for well, it ended up as about 10 around year 3 teachers and learning assistants who were desperate to find out more about what they could do to help the kids who are diagnosed with ADHD in their school. And and we did try and run a parents workshop for nursery age children, but we found that was really poorly attended, and I don't know if that was to do with the publicity or what, but anyway, that was a learning experience for us. And then yesterday I ran a 1-hour training, and of course it's only a 1-hour training because nobody's got any time to do anything longer than this. And so I ran a 1-hour training for 20 odd teachers and learning assistants, and I think I've now at least seen or worked with almost all of the teachers in the school. And when you talk to a large group of teachers, you always worry slightly because this is not what they're used to. They're not used to talking about breathing and grounding and mental imagery. There's 3 topics that they're certainly not used to at all. And so I was really delighted with how that went. All the teachers seemed to get a huge amount out of it, And what's more, one real stroke of genius about the whole thing was that I had 3 of the teachers who'd been in the previous ADHD workshop there. And so when I came to things like breathing and grounding and mental imagery, I asked them what their experience had been with the children that they are learning assistants to, or teachers. And they were absolutely great, which was probably the best convincer in the room, because they were saying things like, this child, one of the children I try and help, has never written words on paper. He won't. He just refuses to. She said, I took your idea of getting him to write on a flip chart. So he stood up. He wasn't sitting at his desk. He was standing up, and he started writing on a flip chart. And this child could write. She said it was unbelievable. In 5 or 10 minutes, he had written whole sentences that he'd never written before, and he got this big grin on his face. And so that was a great convincer for them. There was another child who she had adapted one of the techniques I use for getting people to copy down from the board without looking at the paper. And I can't remember exactly how she'd adapted it, but she'd adapted it for a kid who got a lot of different learning differences. And she said it worked like magic. And I congratulated her. I said, that's exactly what we want you to do. We want you to, I'm telling you these skills about breathing, grounding and mental imagery, and how you can use them for literacy and numeracy and concentration and everything else. But I want you to adapt them for what works for those particular children. I do have, which I will send to you, a little handout sitting here in front of me, which is the summary, if you like, of the talk I did to these 20 staff yesterday. And so I did it on one page because I thought they haven't got time to read anything. I'll do it on one page just to remind them what they'd listened to. And then on the back, I drew 9 pictures and said, you know, this is all about mental imagery. Then what do each one of these pictures mean to you? So it was like a little review of what I'd been talking about and getting them to think about how those pictures reflected what I'd been saying. So that was my summary. And from now on, I am in school for 1 day a week. So that's where I am with my particular school. Going back to what it says on the screen here, the neurodivergent school coach will have a real thirst for continuously learning. We can't stop learning. We have to continuously learn because there is stuff that comes out all the time, and I'm hoping that we can have a technique for sharing it between us. We have to be open-minded, and we have to remember that children may think and learn differently, and each child it's at a different place in their learning journey. Yesterday's child that I was talking about was an artist, and he had great mental imagery, so he was halfway there already. Others you may find have got no mental imagery, or they think they've got none, or they've been frightened, so they've put their mental imagery in the closet somewhere. My objectives, and I'll open this up in a few minutes because we should have a few more minutes on the call. My objective is to get students understanding how they think and learn best and what affects them. So making them independent learners. Students understanding how they can reduce their anxiety, how we can reduce the cost of SEN, because there is so much money going into SEN at the moment, and a lot of it's actually having no result at all. People are sending their children for assessment, and nothing much is different in the school afterwards because the school has got no money to change what's going on or to give them individual support. But I don't actually believe they need individual support. I think they need skills. They need skills to keep their mental imagery under control. That is absolutely certain. We'll have better educated children, and what I want to see is like 95% of them reading and maths is that they're successful SAT levels before they complete year 6. I really fear for children who have got low reading, spelling and maths skills before they go to secondary school. Minimal levels of anxiety, that is also true before they go to secondary school, which is going to generate more anxiety anyway. And somehow to get a legacy into the school for future years. And so it's self-generating. And one of the children I talked to this week, he was so pleased with what he'd done. He was really, really excited. I said, what are you going to go and do now? And he said, I'm going to go and teach my friends. And so I went, okay, fine. You know, he'd suddenly learned how to look half a dozen words that he'd not been able to spell before, and they weren't difficult. But, you know, the first thing he wanted to do was tell his friends. I think the next thing might be to tell his parents, but there we go. I've got to put in place some system for sending information back to the parents and back to the teachers. Just to mention The Dear Old Elephants in the Classroom, my latest book, which you'll all be familiar with. This was a picture of the 100 books that we sent out to primary schools as my fundraiser back in last July. And when I get round to my birthday this year, perhaps I'll do another fundraiser for another 100 books that all went out at cost price, and I paid for the postage. And this is invaluable material for schools. So I hope if you're working with a school, I think most people have said they've already given their school a book. That's absolutely fabulous. Thank you so much. So what next? If you're not familiar with this, I just put this up, is go to empoweringlearning.co.uk, make sure you're registered for newsletters. I think almost everybody on the call is, but if there is other people, then do put yourself on the list. Next week's module is for different languages and comprehension, I think, is the topic for next week. I'm putting together all the modules so that you'll be able to pick them up as recordings in the masterclass section, but I've got a bit behind this week, so I haven't managed to do that. Learn the skills for yourself, your school, through the short training programs. We can offer schools so much useful, valuable information if they can find the time and maybe the resources to do it. There is a really useful webinar there, which is when I did the webinar on easy ways to teach literacy to dyslexics, and so I do recommend that one. And so we have got a few minutes for questions, so if anybody likes to offer me any questions, I'd be pleased to answer them. I think it'll be interesting to see how it develops. I mean, if anybody's got any ideas on how we can get it funded, that would be absolutely great, because that's going to be a question for next academic year, I think. But meanwhile, if we carry on with what we're doing and document what we're doing, then we should have some really good evidence. And I should point out that I've had 4, or is it 5, practitioners on the call tonight. There are more practitioners doing this. Most of the I've picked out the ones which were mainly not embedded in school as a teacher or something like that. But there are more who are teachers of particular classes, and so they're just working with their individual class. So there's quite a few more of those.
People, I could find somebody that might know more.
And I think the mental health angle is quite powerful at the moment. There is a lot of money going into mental health, and I think it was in the last call I talked about the connection between special needs and mental health and how one can drift into the other. And I was talking yesterday to the group I was doing in school of 20 teachers, and I put up my board of learning differences on one side and mental health on the other side. And I said, I've tried this model out with several students who are in secondary school, and talking about what their anxiety is all about. And when it comes to it, it's mainly about learning differences. And they all were sitting there nodding, and I thought, yes, absolutely fine. The more we can get that message across to primary school teachers, that it's their responsibility to, by whatever means, enable these kids to become proficient at spelling, reading and maths, so they don't drop down the anxiety plug hole and get more and more stressed when they get to secondary school. That's a really important function for primary schools, I believe. Thank you all very much, and I look forward to you joining us next week. We're doing some of the interesting topics like different languages and comprehension and how things like that work. And so I look forward to talking to you then. Thanks a lot. Bye.